Have you ever entered your living room with everything appearing to be in its proper place? No clothes on the chair, no dishes in the sink, and yet it still feels heavy, as if there is something unsaid in the air itself. Most likely, it's not the dust. Not even the mess is the problem. It's the interior design, the kind of unseen clutter that accumulates gradually, particularly around the age of 60, when life changes but our surroundings don't necessarily adapt. Many elderly people hold on to things simply because they have always been there, not because they are lovely or necessary, and gradually those objects cease to be decorative and begin to suffocate. A bowl on the table that hasn't contained anything in 10 years, a soft figure, and an unopened throw cushion. They gather more than just dust. They gather silence. And eventually, that silence may begin to feel like a silent burden bearing down on you. Let's now pose the actual query. What is the one item in your house that used to make you happy, but now just sits there, soaking up energy, light, and time? Tell the truth. Tell us in the comment section. We're not here to pass judgment. We're here to reflect. Go ahead and like this video if it changes your perspective on even one thing today. If you think your house should represent who you are now, rather than just who you were in the past, subscribe. Seniors are smart, and today we're making room for purpose as well as peace. Eudora might not have thought of herself as cluttered. She was 73 years old, and had long since moved out of the large colonial home where she and her late husband had raised their boys. Her quiet 2-bedroom cottage in northern Michigan, where Mom now lived alone, was often described as just enough for me and my ideas. Every morning the couch cushions fluffed up like clockwork, the floors were swept, and the dishes were always done. However, there remained a faint uneasiness she was unable to identify, in spite of the command. Only until her neighbor's daughter, who was visiting from out of state, casually said, "Your house feels kind of heavy." Did it hit home for her? 5 different throw cushions that no one ever leaned on, 3 shelves filled with porcelain swans, a floral wreath above a fireplace that hadn't been lit in years, and carefully arranged decor surrounding Eudora, May as she stood in her living room. Everything was in its original location. Suddenly, though, she was unable to recall why. It wasn't a mess. It was a building of memory. Her present was infused with fragments of her history until they became unrecognizable. A dehydrated bouquet from an old funeral. An oddly irrelevant framed phrase that once gave her strength during a difficult period. Trinkets that are given out of duty. Things that were once emotional, but are now only objects. She did something daring while sitting in her armchair that evening. She surveyed her surroundings as though she were going to her own house for the first time. With inquiry, not sentimentality. What, after all, was bringing her peace? And what was just occupying space since she didn't want to offend it? That was the start of her adventure. Not with donation baskets or garbage bags, but with a single, straightforward query. Does this still represent my current self? The tale of Eudora May is not unique. Many elderly people maintain their decor out habit rather than affection. And if those behaviors aren't examined, they might hold us back to versions of ourselves that we've outgrown. She didn't clear out her house via decluttering. She did it to recover it, not from dirt, but from dust of her emotions. As we explore her most unexpected findings, you may begin to view your own house in a new light as well. Towers of useless trinkets are the first item. A corner curio cabinet that Eudora May owned had accompanied her through 3 different residences and over 40 years. It has little brass knobs and exquisite etched panels on a glass front. It had also been her pride for years. Her sister passed away years ago, leaving behind a collection of commemorative spoons from all 50 states, rows of little porcelain animals, and tiny crystal bells from long-forgotten vacation locations. Each shelf has a precise placement, delicate lighting, and thoughtful balance. However, the cabinet had evolved into more of a museum than a relic. Eudora knelt down one afternoon to pick up a sock that had dropped behind her reading chair. She could also see the bottom shelf from that low position. A thick, unbroken coating of dust covered the base of a miniature, ballerina-shaped figurine. She realized it had been a long time since she had opened a cabinet, let alone dusted inside. These were no longer cherished objects. They were overlooked. And oddly, she wasn't depressed at that realization. She felt liberated by it. We rarely discuss how clutter doesn't always appear disorganized. It can occasionally be heartfelt, tastefully placed, and exquisite in its own right. However, beauty that loses its ability to evoke recognition turns into background noise. Additionally, elderly people, particularly those who live alone, frequently bear the silent burden of decor that hasn't been fully appreciated in years. Clear, airy surfaces are becoming more popular among younger generations. Not because they are frigid minimalism, but rather because they promote mental calm. That's sage advice. Eudora became aware that she was no longer feeling comforted by her whatnot shelves. They served as stand-ins for a past she didn't have to keep reenacting. She didn't discard everything. 3 pieces that held significance were retained by her. She received a spoon from her late sister's hometown, a bell from her honeymoon, and a small bird from her grandchild. Everything else was captured on camera, appreciated, and then released. Would you have an answer, or would you shrug if someone came into your living room today and inquired about the collection on your shelf? Trinket towers are beautiful, but once they stop making you happy, they start to weigh you down. Letting them go is acceptable. Allowing your space to breathe has strength, since your tranquility is more important than your dust. The second item is meaningless, antiquated wall art. In her foyer, Eudora May has a painting of a vase filled with vivid yellow sunflower. Purchased during a weekend sale at a nearby home goods store, it had been there since the early 1990s. She passed it mindlessly for 4 years, occasionally glancing at it while dusting the frame, but never truly noticing it. She wasn't offended, but she wasn't motivated either. It was just there. When she was rearranging family photos one evening to incorporate her newest great-grandchild, she stopped and asked herself if she would even notice if the painting vanished tomorrow. No, was the response. Many seniors go through this without realizing it. We collect wall art over time because it looks good or fills the space, but it has no true meaning. It's simple to ignore how this kind of decor gradually degrades into visual clutter, occupying both physical and emotional space without contributing anything worthwhile. You've stopped seeing a painting because it's just wallpaper masquerading as art. Eudora made the decision to swap out her sunflower painting for something more sentimental. A framed recipe from her mother, scrawled on an old index card that had become yellow. It brought her memories of Sunday dinners and cozy kitchens, and each time she passed it, she smiled. Her hallway felt completely different after making that one adjustment. It was no longer merely ornamentation. It was the manifestation of recollection. For many senior citizens, new wall art can revitalize a space without breaking the bank or even purchasing new items. In ways that a mass-produced print could never. A handwritten message from a loved one, a collage of unguarded family images, or even a well-liked poem in exquisite script may add warmth and authenticity. Style isn't the only factor here. Connection is key. Look around your walls for a moment. Compared to 20 years ago, what do they say about your current self? Is there a single obstacle you might overcome today and create your own? Let us know in the comments. If you were starting over, what would you hang there? The third item is imitation plants that appear worn out. The concept of plants had long appealed to Eudora May. The entire neighborhood used to be envious of her little garden back her house, which was full with tomatoes, daisies, and lavender. At 73, however, her mobility had diminished, and she had gradually replaced her living flora with low-maintenance, synthetic ones. It made sense at first. No bending, no pests, and no watering. However, something evolved over time. She was vacuuming beneath her hallway console one day when she stopped next to a faded artificial plant that had been there for almost 8 years. The color of the leaves had faded. She hadn't realized the base was covered in dust, and she became aware of something subtly disturbing for the first time. The room didn't feel alive with this vegetation. It felt trapped. The purpose of fake plants is to resemble the dead of nature. However, they eventually do the reverse, particularly if they are not well maintained. They become immobile, and that's the last thing you need in a house that already holds so many lingering memories. Seniors are increasingly gravitating towards areas that feel airy, natural, and bright instead of too congested fake flora. Not everyone needs or wants a plant in every available space. However, it's time to reconsider a product's intended use when it gathers dust instead of adding vitality. Eudora made the decision to part with all, save one. She switched out the fern in her doorway for a lone snake plant. Resilient, authentic, and little maintenance. It provided her with something plastic could never provide and simply required water every 2 weeks. A feeling of care, no matter how tiny. Even one actual plant may be too much for some people. And that's all right. The intention is not to increase pressure. The goal is to create an environment that truly makes you feel better. A simple vase with a revolving stem of dried lavender or fresh eucalyptus might occasionally be more calming than a jungle of artificial foliage. Here's the question then. Examine your house. Are those plants subtly disappearing into the background, or are they bringing vitality to the space? Don't be scared to let go of things that are acting like they're alive, because you should have actual comfort in your house, not simply the appearance of it. However, most individuals argue for the next point all the way through. Eudora did too, until she noticed that it was inconspicuously occupying more than simply space. The fourth item is too many throw pillows. Eudora May had no intention of collecting throw pillows. It kind of occurred. Even though the guest room had been empty for more than a year, there were still a few ornamental ones for it, 2 for the couch, and 1 for her favorite reading chair. Then came the embroidered ones, the ones with holiday themes, and the ones she couldn't resist buying when they were on sale. Before she knew it, soft squares in every possible size, color, and tassel were virtually filling her tiny living room. After a difficult day, she decided to sit down on her couch one evening, and that was the pivotal moment. She groaned after spending almost a minute taking out 6 throw cushions to make room for a comfortable seat. After settling in, she came to a realization. In fact, none of those pillows helped her relax. They weren't luxuries. They were barriers. Who am I doing this for? She asked herself as she surveyed the cushions piled on the floor. Throw pillows have become a quiet addiction to home decor, particularly among older folks who want their spaces to seem finished, warm, and cozy. However, when they proliferate, they have the opposite effect, causing visual clutter, physical inconvenience, and even trip hazards. Not to mention the amount of effort spent cleaning, fluffing, and correcting them all the time, especially for elderly people with arthritis or restricted movement. On that night, Eudora made up her mind. 3 pillows were hers. She had 3 cushions, a strong lumbar pillow for her lower back, a soft square that supported her head while she napped in the afternoon, and a smaller cushion that her granddaughter had sewn in sewing class. The remainder was given to friends in need or donated. The improvement in the room's appearance was not the biggest surprise to her. She was feeling so much better in it. Clearer lines of sight, quicker cleaning, and easier mobility were all made possible by fewer cushions. Most significantly, it restored her area as a place of relaxation rather than excessive embellishment. This is the silent reality that many people choose not to speak. Having a lot of stuff doesn't make you comfortable. It depends on how well everything works for you. Perhaps it's time to create room for what actually supports you if your pillows are just getting in the way. You should examine your armchair, sofa, and bed. Are those cushions comfortable companions? Or are they just zippered background noise? It could be time to reduce the burden 1 cushion at a time if finding a place to sit takes longer than 10 seconds. The fifth item is stationery collector's China. A big oak hutch with glass doors housed Odora May's grandmother's China. Every meal is presented with care, much like a work of art. Pale blue margins and hand-painted gold trim adorn ivory porcelain. She recalled the tales they told, how her grandmother purchased the set after years of saving, each plate separately, how it was reserved for special events, how it used to make dinners on Christmas Eve seem like a regal feast. However, that was a different time period. The dishes in Odora's house had not been touched in more than 3 decades. They were untouchable, too delicate, too kind, and too attached to a memory of a long-gone person, not because they weren't loved. And so many seniors fall into that peculiar trap. We conflate keeping someone's belongings unaltered with paying respect to their legacy. However, this is what Odora discovered one afternoon while cleaning the hutch of yet another layer of dust. She didn't feel close to her grandmother because she kept all of that china. She felt compelled by it. So she posed a challenging question to herself. Would anyone else want these if I were gone tomorrow? Everything changed with that one question. Odora selected her favorite teacup and saucer rather than the entire set. She remembered the night it happened over a Thanksgiving toast, and the fact that it had a small chip in it made her happy. Grandma Louisa made every table seem like home, so she had it framed in a deep shadow box with a handwritten inscription next to it. Now hanging in her dining room, that one piece of exhibit did more than just fill space. It told a narrative. She offered her nephews and granddaughters the remainder of the set. They took a few pieces. She gave them to a non-profit that assists refugee families in finding new homes, because the majority weren't. By releasing them, Odora preserved the joyous energy they formerly possessed rather than the item. It's not necessary for heirlooms to last forever. Meaning, not things, is the true legacy. So, this is your time to think. Which inheritance are you clinging to out of obligation rather than love? Which artwork would you like to draw attention to while allowing the others to find new homes elsewhere? Tell us in the comment section below. You never know who could be inspired to take the first step after hearing your tale. Sixth item. Seasonal decor for the entire year. At first, Odora might not have even noticed it. The small ceramic pumpkin nestled next to her bookcase. The fading red and green pillow had subtly become a part of her year-round sofa arrangement. Behind her kitchen sink was a dusty Easter rabbit figurine, its colors faded by sunlight and time, and its ears chipped. When a neighbor came over for tea one day and inquired politely, "Still celebrating Christmas in May?" Odora stopped and took a close look at her living room. The effects of seasonal decor are long-lasting. It remains up a bit longer at first since it seems like too much work to take it down. It then abruptly disappears into the background, taking up space, gathering dust, and gently disrupting the room's energy while remaining unnoticed. Nothing feels really exceptional when everything is always celebratory. Silent clutter like this is more prevalent than most people realize, particularly with elderly persons. It can be challenging to determine when a season is over, particularly when the days seem to blur together, or when life is more subdued than it once was. Odora felt that displaying those small seasonal items all year long was a means of preserving happiness. However, rather than igniting joy, they had begun to weaken the mood. The enchantment had vanished. At that point, she made what she now refers to as her seasonal joy box. For every season, she kept 2 or 3 purposeful items within. A snowflake plate with her favorite winter candle, her granddaughter's preschool-made spring garland, a little pumpkin made of wood, a Valentine's Day cloth heart. Easy to rotate, meaningful, and straightforward. She would replace them every season, show them some affection, and then put them away for the following year. What was different? Her house started to breathe once more. Every season turned into a gradual change, an opportunity to stop and think. Decorating wasn't the point. It was about maintaining awareness of the here and now. The nicest part is that each rotation took less than 5 minutes. Think about this if your house has gradually turned into a mess of leftover Christmas food. None of the seasons are felt, while they are all visible. Instead of a never-ending parade of the past, let your environment represent the present. How about you? Which out-of-season item do you still have in your house? Put it in the comments section. We will not pass judgment. One shelf at a time, we're all learning to live a little more intentionally. The 7th item is busy valances and thick drapes. Thick burgundy velvet drapes, replete with tasseled valances and heavy curtain rods that creaked slightly when drawn, framed Odora May's living room for decades. At a time when homes were supposed to feel opulent and formal, they had formerly been in style. When they were first installed, she recalled how proud she was. However, something changed with time. The fabric absorbed the smell of time, the color faded, and the emotional and physical weight of the curtains started to seem out of place. The light, or rather, the absence of it, was what ultimately gave her away, not the appearance. She became aware that she was having trouble reading the newspaper in her favorite recliner one gloomy winter morning. The room felt thick and dark, even with the lamp on. It felt like a veil was removed from her mood, as well as from the window as she opened the curtain a few inches. Many elderly people are unaware of the significant impact window treatments have on their everyday health. More than just sunlight is blocked by thick drapes and tiered valances. They interfere with the normal signals that our bodies utilize to control our energy, sleep patterns, and emotional stability. Seniors are especially sensitive to light fluctuations, and overly dim houses might eventually make them feel lethargic, depressed, or even confused. Soft, light-filtering linen panels took the place of Odora's previous configuration. They provided privacy while letting sunshine stream into the space. The transformation happened instantly. Her plants grew more vibrant. The air had a fresher feel. Her own vitality increased. Most importantly, the room appeared larger all of a sudden. It was because the light had space to flow, not because anything else had moved. She chose something that made her feel open, at ease, and present rather than anything fad or pricey. Perhaps it's time to let the light in if your windows are dressed for an outdated version of your life. Your house should literally change as you do. Get rid of anything that makes your room feel smaller than it actually is. And stick with us, because the following item may be stealthily taking away the freedom and space you've worked so hard to build. Even though many people believe it makes their home feel rich or impressive. The 8th item is formal furnishings for absent visitors. A magnificent oak table with 6 matching high-back chairs, immaculate polished and hardly used, was positioned in the corner of Odora May's dining room. It had been a source of pride for decades and had belonged to her mother before her. At one point, the family had gathered around that table for every Thanksgiving, birthday, and significant occasion. However, at 73, Odora now ate most of her meals at the little round table in her breakfast nook, where the light streamed in gently each morning and the chairs didn't creak. The formal dining set was no longer so much a memory as it was a monument. The table wasn't the only thing. In the living room, a fireplace that had not been used for years was flanked by 2 rigid leather recliners. Both opted for fashion over coziness. Both were quietly waiting for infrequent visitors. They were chairs for socializing, the kind that used to fill her house with footsteps and laughter. However, the majority of those visitors were phone calls rather than walk-ins these days. Odora stopped cleaning the dining chairs for the 3rd time that month one Saturday and asked herself a question that few people dare to ask. What exactly am I waiting for? Many elderly people are unaware of this silent reality. As if maintaining a kind of hospitality that no longer suits our way of life, we frequently cling to formal furniture. We don't design for today, we design for tomorrow. However, it becomes more of a burden than a benefit when our houses are crammed with furniture that no longer supports our bodies, daily routines, or social activity. The enormous dining table was subsequently given by Odora to a nearby shelter that assists young families in furnishing their first homes. She replaced it with a smaller extendable table that could accommodate 4 people comfortably, but could be folded down to 2 for daily use. She swapped out the rigid chairs with 2 sturdy swivel rockers that were portable, lightweight, and ideal for her evening tea or afternoon crossword. Her area became more useful in addition to becoming more attractive. Minimalism does not imply emptiness or coldness. It entails getting rid of things that don't deserve to be in your life. Your furniture should serve you, not visitors who may visit occasionally or never. Therefore, consider whether you have any furniture in your house that you preserve more for tradition's sake than for practicality. Perhaps it's time to create space for comfort, mobility, and tranquility if it's not working for you right now. Wall quotes that no longer represent who you are as item 9. A wooden sign has been hanging over the entrance to Odora May's house for more than 2 decades. It had been a gift from a colleague during her last years as a school principal, when her life was a tornado of lesson plans, parent meetings, and the delightful chaos of children. The slogan, "Chaos is creativity," was burned into its grain. It brought her joy at the moment, and served as a lesson to accept life's messiness, find beauty in the unorganized, and let go of perfection. Her days were slower now, though. There was silence in her home, and it no longer seemed like encouragement whenever she went by the sign. It seems out of date, not incorrect, but no longer hers. Unaware of how much the words influence the ambience of a space, many senior citizens display quotation art. Once selected to uplift or enliven us, wall quotes might end up being background noise, or, worse, subliminal reminders of identities we have outgrown. Something doesn't necessarily still reflect your truth just because it did in the past. And the phrases on your wall become a silent dissonance when they no longer fit the beat of your present existence. Odora, who is now living a simpler, more contemplative life, glanced up one afternoon while drinking tea in a reading nook and asked herself, what quote would comfort me today? It was not the woman she was when she was raising children or chairing faculty meetings. Soft, honest, present, she removed the previous phrase and replaced it with a little banner made of linen that said simply, "Still becoming." The greatest wall quote for some people may be none at all. Simply a tidy area that exudes calm without requiring any spoken words. The goal is not to embellish. For some, it could be a handwritten note, a favorite hymnal passage, or a silent mantra, such as "I am allowed to rest." The purpose is to contemplate. Allow your walls to communicate with you rather than simply with you. Look around your area slowly. What messages do your walls convey to you every day? Do they still gently pull you back or hoist you up? Leave your response in the space provided here. If your wall revealed the truth about your day, what would it say? Glass top surfaces. Item 10. In the past, Odora May admired the smoothness of glass. Decades ago, a cousin gave her a transparent rectangle coffee table with silver legs as a housewarming present. It seemed sleek and contemporary at the time, like something from a home magazine. She maintained it immaculately for a while. Corner-to-corner polish, Windex, and microfiber cloths. However, as the years passed, something changed. Fingerprints caught her attention more than the table itself. Dust settled rather quickly. Her morning may be ruined by a single water ring. It started to feel more like a job than a feature, reminding her every day of something she had neglected. Additionally, even minor chores like this can start to wear you out as you get older, especially if you live alone. They are constant, not because they are difficult. Surfaces with glass tops are marketed as sophisticated and spacious. However, in reality, they frequently need more maintenance than they are worth. The light makes every dust particle, speck, and smudge evident, and a subtle pressure is created by that visibility. That has to be cleaned by me. I intended to remove that. This type of mental clutter accumulates for elderly folks, particularly those who prefer simplicity and peace in their surroundings. Eudora became aware that she was no longer enjoying her coffee table. She had things under control. She replaced it with a hardwood table that had rounded corners and a soft matte surface. The sun didn't shine at it. Not all of the touches were visible. It was soft, lived in, and warm, and the space felt instantly softer without the glass. The same was true for a few display units and photo frames on glass shelves. She replaced the frames with natural wood, but she preserved the pictures. She also took out a side table made of glass that had turned into a storage space for unopened mail. Most striking to her was the room's rapid relaxation. It didn't appear incomplete. It appeared to be free. Simplifying does not have to mean removing your home's individuality, especially for elders. It entails designing an area where light doesn't constantly murmur judgment at you. Examine your glass top pieces more closely. If you are always wiping, adjusting, or feeling behind, are they actually helping you, or are they subtly making your day more stressful? The house with the ideal sheen isn't always the most tranquil. That's the one that accepts you for who you are. Eudora May's home didn't feel empty after her silent metamorphosis was complete. It seemed to have been banished. The things that had made sense amid a louder, busier time of year were gone. Breathing room replaced them. Not bare, not sterile, yet purposeful. She could go from one end of her living room to the other without having to bend over ornamented corners or avoid baskets. She moved more fluidly. Her gaze came down softer, and she saw something unexpected in that silence. None of it escaped her notice. She was unaffected by the porcelain animals, the abandoned dining chairs, or the seasonal items that were discarded out of habit. Actually, it was the other way around. Every item she let go of made a memory lighter and more accessible to her heart, since it was no longer bound to anything tangible. Her grandmother's china story was still fresh in her mind. The thrill of purchasing her first curtains was still fresh in her mind. However, those memories didn't have to be kept in things that were never used. Eudora did not design a minimalist home. It was a home that now suited her, one that respected the past without dwelling on it. She still kept her mother's framed recipe card, her favorite books, and her granddaughter's sewing project. However, every piece had merited its position. It nevertheless had significance, not because it was costly or a present. After 60, we hardly ever discuss this transformation, the distinction between maintaining goods and maintaining peace. We spend a great deal of our life collecting, conserving, and upholding things until one day they start to subtly control us. At that point, the delicate process of letting go starts. To create room for relaxation, introspection, and rejuvenation, not to obliterate history. Here's the lesson, then. Your house is not a museum showcasing all of your past passions. It serves as a haven for your evolving self. Click the like button if this video helped you get any insight. Share this with someone you know whose heart is heavy, but whose house appears filled. Subscribe if you're prepared for a residence that encourages your tranquility rather than your guilt. We're creating room in our lives and in our homes right here on Wise Aging Seniors. One kind choice at a time.